arranged up here to give you a quick background of what's coming up next. The Sweden-India Transport Innovation and Safety Partnership started in 2020 on the sidelines of the UN Road Safety Conference that took place in Stockholm. It was inaugurated by Minister Nitin Gadkari, the Minister for Road Transport and Highways, and at that time Minister Thomas Eneroth, the Minister for Infrastructure, Government of Sweden. Today, the next panel will talk about the importance that this collaboration has given us in terms of a roadmap for the future and what we need to keep in mind as we go forward in a green transition in the automotive sector. I'd like to welcome our speakers on stage, starting with NIKLAS GUSTAFSSON, Head of Public Affairs at Volvo Group and SIBC board member. First on stage. Next, Maria KRAFFT, Director, Swedish Transport Administration. And ROWAN HÖGMAN, Director and Head of Research Collaboration Ecosystems, Ericsson. We have with us on stage, online, GAURAV GUPTA, Director of the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, and Dr. JOHN-FREDRIK GRONVALL, Chalmers University. Okay, so we've had a number of collaborations. We've talked about delegations coming backwards, going from India to Sweden, Sweden to India. We've had a number of years under COVID while this collaboration has been developed and strengthened. What I'd like to do today is talk about what does collaboration really look like when you have ambitious targets and governments and industry and partners on both sides working together to achieve these targets collaboratively. I want to start with GAURAV GUPTA online with us today. Very, very happy to have you with us. You joined us in December 2022 at IIT Delhi, and you were part of a workshop that the SITIS partnership held on accident research. Now, the ministry has a number of ambitious targets to meet in the coming decade. Could you share with the audience here today those targets and why a collaboration like SITIS is valuable?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to begin by expressing my gratitude for the opportunity to be part of this panel. It is indeed an honor to be part of an event that commensurates with the 75th anniversary of diplomatic ties between our two nations under the theme As we all know, road safety is a global challenge. That demands concentrated efforts and innovation to address. The Ministry of Road Transport and Highway in India has been dedicated in its commitment to reducing the number of road accidents and fatalities. Over the last few years, we have undertaken several initiatives aimed at strengthening the road system, the road safety ecosystem, which I would like to share with you. Our approach encompasses all four E's, that is engineering, enforcement, education, and emergency care. Under road engineering, we have made road safety audits on all national highways mandatory at all stages, including design, construction, operation, and maintenance. We have also accorded very high priority in identifying and rectifying black spots on national highways, and significant progress has been made in implementing both short-term and long-term initiatives. Model safe roads and model safe construction zones also being developed to set exemplary safety standards. Under vehicle engineering, we have issued several notifications to enhance passenger safety, including mandatory airbags, safety provisions for children, and the fitment of various safety technology. We have launched Bharat New Car Assessment Program, that is BNCAP, to provide a star rating to passenger vehicles and providing consumers an indication of the level of protection offered by different vehicles. Further, voluntary vehicle fleet modernization program also has been institutionalized in a scientific vehicle scrapping ecosystem for voluntary and environmental friendly phasing out of unfit and old polluting vehicles and their replacement with fuel efficient, environmental friendly, new generation vehicles. Government of India also has taken several initiatives to increase the adoption of electric vehicles, including exemptions from permit and registration, certificate fee for electric vehicles, advisory to states to waive the road tax, standards for aspects related to safety, range power, type approval for EVs, production-linked incentives, etc. Under enforcement, the Motor Vehicle Amendment Act of 2019 introduced stricter penalties for traffic rule violations and targeted improvements in the safety of drivers, vehicles, and road infrastructure. Rules for electronic monitoring and enforcement of road safety also have been issued. And now we are actively working for the installation of automated traffic management systems on the entire network of national highways. Under emergency care, we have issued various rules for protection of good Samaritans who provide emergency care at accident scenes. We have made provisions for ambulances with paramedical staff at toll plazas on national highway corridors. As a result of few of these initiatives, we have seen a reduction in road fatalities per 100,000 population from 39 in 2016 to 29 in 2021. Per 10,000 vehicles from 6.6 in 2016 to 4.3 in 2021. While this progress is encouraging, but a lot more need to be done.
Gaurav, I'm going to stop you there because I'll move to Maria, but I think what you're saying is really important for us to start our discussion, which is policy needs to be the roadmap and the hand that points in the right direction to help the different stakeholders coming on board to understand what they need to do to move forward. And of course, following February 2020, when Minister Nitin Gadkari had joined us in Stockholm, we had the Vision Zero Ministerial Conference in June 2023 that Trafikverket held, Swedish Transport Administration, bringing together as a follow-up from what Gaurav is saying in terms of we need to set ambition. We need to set the roadmap. We need to be clear to our stakeholders that we are not changing direction. We're going to work with you to move forward. I'd like to ask you, Maria, what were the key outcomes of June's conference coming from February 3 years ago, when we were talking about setting these targets?
Yes, the focus was very much about how we better can use the conditions that in the transport planning that road safety is integrated in the 2030 agenda, and how we can use, how road safety can become a significant topic for public procurement, for city planning, for occupational health and safety. And we had a follow-up conference this summer, and our main focus was then how the private and the public organizations' supply chain using the road system. And we're focusing on, since we are seeing that at least around half of all fatalities in Sweden happens in the private and public sectors, or the public and the private sector organizations' supply chain. And I would guess we will find the similar figures in many other countries. And that means that in the same way that companies report their climate footprint, they should report their road safety footprint. and show how they will improve in a more systematic way. And especially for the very, very big companies, they normally start their supply chain in a low and middle income country, collecting raw material, ending up at the customers in somewhere else in the world. So by using this force and the possibility, that would mean that companies' road safety measures would make a change across the national borders. So what we are looking for, that we would like to have more collaborations between different countries, so that we can make this movement. And we need new technology, we need connectivity, we need innovations, and we need governments to work together.
And you mentioned, of course, the need for all sectors to work together, industry, academia. And what we've talked about in the previous panel, and I'd like to come to Niklas in this panel, is the role that industry needs to play when we talk about taking forward ambitious targets. I think Hitesh in our previous panel said something that I'd like, Niklas, you to reflect on, is that policy is a perfect starting point. Sometimes it can be moving too slow, sometimes too fast, but what will make the change is if industry sees the value in their own goal setting, in their own targets, in their own, as Maria says, supply chain pivots. What are your comments when it comes to road safety targets? You've been working with the India-Sweden corridor for some time now, and what are the opportunities that you've seen take place when the conversations and collaborations like SITIS are in place?
Yeah, thank you, Arati. It's a very interesting aspect of it, and if you if you help me reflect a little bit about the Triple-Helix perspective that we have been working with for decades, right? Society's government needs to do something, policies, regulations. Industry needs to do something, universities need to do something, and so on. What's interesting to me when I reflect over a couple of years in traffic safety arena, but also in the green transition, actually, is that at different times it's different forerunners in this triple helix, right? Sometimes it's research telling the right answers, what to do. Sometimes it's policies that is pulling or pushing. And sometimes it's actually industry or the private sector that is the driving force. And I think what we can see in the green transition, we see a lot of industries that is now actually pulling this more than what policies are saying, not more than what research is saying, because they have been saying about the climate change for many, many years now. But still, I see the industry role, the private sector role in the green transition being really forceful since a couple of years. Not the whole world, not all companies out there, but a lot of them, and a lot of the big ones. Volvo, for instance. But on the traffic safety side, we need to get to the same climate of collaboration and on helping each other, who is actually pushing or pulling the other for the time being. And I mean, so I really like this, what Maria is into, that private sector engagement, and not necessarily based on the fact that, well, that's where accidents happens. For sure, of course. I mean, it is the industry activities that keeps the society running, so it's not so strange, honestly. but it means that the engagement from the private sector needs to be there. For sure. We still have 1.3 million deaths every year, right? And we can't just discuss it on global collaboration platforms, policy platforms, if you like. It needs to be more feet on the ground, and that's possibly where the private sector can actually help, because we are used to daily business is to make progress step by step. And the CITIS collaboration is a good mix of academia, policies, and private sector engagement in it, and really trying to make change, put it into business, if you like. And reporting is one part of it, for sure, for the private sector, but maybe even more needed is to really make change quickly.
And I'd like just to comment on that because, of course, SITIS, the Sweden-India Transport Innovation and Safety Partnership, is bringing industry together. It brings academia together. It brings government together. And it allows, again, a safe space for that discussion because, of course, Niklas, you touch upon the need for industry to take steps forward. You have to do that in partnership with your Indian partners and do it in collaboration, of course, with academic partners to make application and pilots possible. And to have that cross-border conversation becomes a really important part of partnerships like SITIS. I actually want to come to JOHN-FREDRIK right now on this exactly. I think the way Niklas put it is really interesting. Every stage has different forerunners. Every stage has different leaders that allow for scale and replication. Now, you've been working in the R&D section for a while and working with SITIS and, of course, previously with Volvo. What have you seen as some of the key best practices as we go forward on data-driven applications for road safety? I think you're on mute, or at least... Yep, we can hear you now. Great.
Yeah, thank you very much, ARATI, and thank you for the technicians that allowed me to speak also. Maybe I first have to correct you. I was not at Volvo. I was at Volvo Cars, the car manufacturer, and organizations. But I have the 20-year experience from the industry, and now I'm at Chalmers University and hosting the data that we gather together with industry and academia to give the researchers a better possibility to understand and do research. But I think the importance of having a good triple-helix solution it's been very fruitful and very successful in Sweden for many years, for decades actually. And just to give one example, one very good example is the National Traffic Accident Investigation Team that we do with the vehicle industry. Of course, it's hosted by the government, the road, the Swedish Road Administration. But the industry and the academia is also very present in these investigations. And jointly and together, we are doing this triple-helix approach to understand the causation of accidents and also give scientifically based solutions later on. And we have also at Chalmers, where I'm placed at the moment, we have also a very good collaboration between the industry, academia, and government within this safer competence network, where we jointly work together to perform good research. The other take on this that I would like to add on is now that we have another interesting dimension, and that is that we have Swedish and India two triple-helix solutions or approaches, and that gives us another possibility to actually also work bilaterally, and that is very good. That Swedish academia can work with Indian academia, Indian industry, Swedish industry, and also all, of course, the governments that have made this possible. But not only on that layer, but also between industry in India and academia in Sweden. So we have a very now multi-dimensional possibility within the SITIS project, and that I think is very good. Very hopefully will be very successful also.
Thank you so much. And I actually want to come to ROWAN now, because it's one thing to talk about Chalmers, Swedish Transport Administration, Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, Volvo and the OEMs. These are the usual suspects. But SITIS has Ericsson. And we can talk connected services. And we can talk collaboration beyond the inner circle, perhaps. How does Ericsson look at technological improvements when it comes to SITIS? And what does this corridor mean for you?
So thank you for that question, ARATI. Super good question. And I must say, I mean, during my 27 years at Ericsson, I think just these Triple-Helix projects are the ones that work the best. You know, they're just super exciting to have that collaboration across where you can do things. And I think India is in a unique position because India has a massive challenge in terms of the traffic, right? A lot of pedestrians on the road, a lot of traffic. But at the same time, what has happened in India during the last year? In October last year, there were 5 cities that had 5G. 6 months later, in April 2023, there were 2,300 cities and towns that had 5G. That's massive. Now, there's a pan-Indian 5G network. It's across the full India, 300,000 base stations in 10 months. That is actually a base station every minute installed in India. So with the situation, a massive traffic and a massive 5G network, India is in a unique position really, because now not only can you use the technology and experiment with it, you can research things like connecting the 5G to looking at the data analysis from all the traffic that's going around, doing AI on it. You can help the drivers predict dangers. You can look at congestion, those kind of things. So that's the first golden opportunity, really, to use the technology for the road safety. Now, there's also a second one, not as important as the first, but I'd like to mention it anyhow. So having this situation, which is pretty unique, you know, this massive traffic and this massive 5G network in place, India has a really the grounds, a platform really to do a lot of innovation around traffic safety. And this is the products and the solutions and the apps that you can develop here, you will be first in the world. So India can, at a later stage, start exporting these kind of things to other countries with the same kind of traffic situation.
I think that's excellent. And Rowan, you give us a really interesting segue because 1 base station a minute in a country that is expanding and growing exponentially. But we have also touched upon the need to understand your user, the need to understand your consumer when you start applying innovation, technology, user behavior, nudging change. So I'm actually going to ask some of the people that were in India a little while ago. Rowan, when was the last time you were in discussion with India? You, of course, have a huge team on the ground. So I'm going to ask NIKLAS, JOHN-FREDRIK, and Rowan to give us one example, just to have a conversation to understand the business model. For those of you working with India, or for Indians here coming to Sweden, you know how important it is to understand what to expect. So if you're asked for dinner in India, you will get invited at 10:30, food at 10:30. The evening starts at 8. In Sweden, it starts at 6 p.m. Very different expectations. So I'm going to ask NIKLAS, JOHN-FREDRIK, Rowan, when it comes to road safety and assumptions when you're planning for application and pilots, what have you seen, given your time on the ground and conversations with your colleagues, that are some of the assumptions that need to be kept in mind that are different to business as usual in a place like Sweden? JOHN-FREDRIK, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I think for all of us from Sweden or Europe, the first thought when we arrived to India is that everything is so different. But at the same time, it's very similar, actually. People are the same, the vehicles are roughly the same, the infrastructure is relatively similar, but the behavior is very, very different. So therefore, I think and also because of that the traffic situation is so extremely fast expanding. So therefore, I think that what we are doing in the SITIS project is to understand not only the differences, but also the similarities, and thereby doing some research on the possibility of how to change behavior, how to change some infrastructural solutions. And there, in that case, we need fast communication, we need data, we need the 5G solutions to pick up the data that we are collecting in these experiments. So not only looking for differences, but also similarities, I believe.
NIKLAS, Rowan mentioned data and traffic. What did you see in your time in India?
No, but absolutely. I would like to build a little bit what JOHN-FREDRIK said here, and that is that we have so much to learn from the traffic situations that we can find in India. Obviously, if we can make it in India, we can probably make it anywhere in the world. So this combination of India and Sweden, then Sweden being in the forefront in the world on traffic safety, it's a great combination bilaterally, just to start there. And we need to learn, and data is everything, of course. Connectivity is everything. Maybe Europe lost the race on 5G. We claim sometimes India will not lose the race on 5G, so that's a good start. And anything nowadays that has to do with traffic safety development is very much about connectivity when it comes to the vehicles and vehicle technology. Another interesting thing is that we have passed the period, right, Maria, about the vehicles as an isolated thing, and let's make them safe, passive safety, and what have you. It's all about system solutions now, and a system solution is about several different components interacting together, right? So from a truck manufacturer perspective, that is what is the key interest to us, to really understand the really complex traffic situations that we can find in India, obviously, and find solutions that goes into a system solution, not only for the vehicles. We will do our part, obviously, as well, but you know, together in a partnership, work on that. And I'm sure we have already learned it, so we have already proven it, but I'm sure we will learn much more that can actually be brought back to Sweden as well in that direction. How can we implement solutions in Sweden that we actually learned in India? I just want to add one thing. This complexity with all pedestrians and bicyclists and three-wheelers and cars and trucks and buses, all of it. It's so interesting. But there is one thing that we actually try to keep in the back of our heads when it comes to trucks, and that is business to business, right? So these are working tools that are out there transporting stuff to keep society running. And what does that mean from a traffic safety perspective? Well, for the driver, he or she is actually at office all day driving that truck, which is a little bit different thing from you know, a passenger car or consumer products, right? There's no difference in importance. All of it is important, but solution-wise, and not at least talking about connectivity, software development, driver support in different contexts, it makes a huge difference for the guy who is actually at his office or her office full day working. And we want to keep them safe, of course. We want everyone to be able to come back from their office every day, right? So that's something that we try to look into. What is the specific solutions for the trucks in society there?
And user behavior is, of course, very important.
User behavior, of course, and then you know, if you buy a Volvo truck, for instance, in India, then it's connected with driver training. I mean, that's obvious, something we've done for many years. But I think that is something we can build on a bit also. And when we reach tipping points, when we have learned enough, implemented enough of solutions, we reach tipping points, and it will change, of course. And behavior is an interesting thing, because that takes time, obviously. But in a business-to-business context, again, the people going to their work, when we have reached that tipping point, it can go really quickly to change stuff in a company, which is not necessarily the case for a private customer all the time.
And that tipping point can be word of mouth as well, in terms of experiences, best practice. And you bring me to a very good point to go back to Maria to say behavioral change. That's at the heart of what we're trying to achieve in terms of how do we stay safe? How do we actually create the users, the truck drivers, the car drivers, the pedestrians, which sometimes get forgotten in India? How do we incorporate and mainstream this plan so that everyone has a part to play? The Vision Zero Academy is something that Trafikverket has as a product for skilling, reskilling, and training. We had a Vision Zero Academy under SITIS very early into our time as a partnership in February 2021. That was made possible with the result of the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, and we worked with their line ministries in all the states of India. And what we saw was a discussion, a very open discussion. Over 500 people participated, talking about wanting to ask questions. It's one thing to have the ambition, but it should be okay to ask the question that might seem a little bit stupid, but to create that safe space to have that discussion. How does Vision Zero do this? How do you create, because you're traveling in different countries every month, and of course we had a great experience in India, and GAURAV, after Maria gives us her comments, I'd love to hear from you about how trainings like this are valuable. But how does Vision Zero take this forward in terms of nudging this change?
It's very much about the system approach, as you were talking about, and the Vision Zero approach sometimes means a mind opener, because it says it's based on an ethical position saying that we can't accept fatalities and severe injuries, and that means we can't have a trading between mobility and life, saying that's the price you have to pay. So, and that means a lot of things, different steps you need to do in a systematic way. It also important step is to realize that humans are humans, which actually mean that even if you have the best education ever, from like child all the way up, the collision, the crashes will still occur. That means that you need to have a strategy that you need to handle dangerous kinetic energy with several preventive solutions, so that when the crash occurs, you will survive. And that as a base and discussion, what does that mean? How do you develop a road system based on that? How do you combine the different components that you were talking about? So it's very much about that. It's very much about what is important indicators, what is important KPIs to follow, and it's really important to stay close to scientific evaluations and not going for, I think this is a good idea, or this feels good, or the opinion is like this. So it's really to follow the scientific baseline. That is a good start as well.
That's great, because of course to have this chance to retrain, to reskill, to have the conversation is important. And GAURAV, I'd like to ask you, because of course the ministry has your centres of excellence where you want to have these conversations on road safety, but not just at a conversational level, but a policy level, a project level, full commercial pilots, as we like to call them. What would you like to see in terms of a Vision Zero conversation happening regulatory-wise, but on the project level? Where would you like partnerships like SITIS?
Yeah, Vision Zero concept has really given everybody a thought, which already ma'am was mentioning, that it makes you think that we can live our life by making our roads very, very safer. But definitely, one of the panelists has mentioned about the user behavior. So that is also one of the very important things based upon the various interventions we have seen in our country. Like a complete paradigm shift in the road user behavior is very much necessary. Like, just to add into this, an alert, attentive, aware and skilled driver can avoid any mishappening in most of the conditions, whereas an absent, lost, unskilled, aggressive or drunk driver will most likely cause an accident, even in the best of the conditions. So here in the government of India is putting all efforts to make our roads and vehicles as safe as possible. And further to give the point, we have launched a application, a program that is IRED/EDAR program to collect all the data about all the mishappenings or the crashes happening on the road, to do the data-driven interventions on all those positions. And further, we are working on various other initiatives to improve the system of road safety in the country. And we believe that innovations and collaborations, such as the partnership between Sweden and India, will definitely going to play a pivotal role in achieving the net zero future while ensuring the safety of our citizens on the road.
Thanks, GAURAV. I'm actually going to take what you say now in terms of the need to change and the openness the ministry has, as well as the government of India, in moving forward. And I'm going to come back to ROWAN, because last year at the India Mobile Congress, for those of us watching the news at that time, we saw Prime Minister Modi driving a 5G simulated car from the comfort of Pragati Maidan in Delhi. He was very excited about being involved in a 5G experiment. And of course, 5G, in addition to hydrogen, as we mentioned earlier, seem to be the key words of how we can move forward faster. You mentioned to us, of course, how fast this application and rollout is happening in India. What do you see 5G technology and that integration playing when we talk about creating changes on the ground for user behavior in the way that Maria is talking about, and of course, GAURAV is mentioning?
So I think innovation super important in an industry is changing a lot, and I mean we as a company we are reinvesting 16 to 19% of our revenues every year just to create new innovation, create new R&D and so on, and it's so important for 5G. We do have our own foundry, Ericsson One, where we look at new business ideas and try to take things further, but it's so important that we get the 5G and the services going for the operators to install new types of things in their networks. And this is something that's super important for all the consumers as well that are looking at 5G. We track consumers. We have something called the Consumer Lab. We just have a new report out. If you like have a look, please do. It's very easy to find, ericsson.com/consumer lab. You can find the latest around what consumers really are interested in terms of 5G. And what we're doing here is really we started our own initiative called Startup 5G, where we gather the best ideas that we can find around the world. We have some 100 companies there in the portfolio already now. We're gathering these ideas and then we're matching them with operators around the world so that they can implement the best of the breed services from around there. You mentioned IMC, and this year the theme for IMC is startup and global digital innovation. So what we're doing there is we're showing a number of new use cases in collaboration with Indian startups, and it's around XR and it's around smart manufacturing and other verticals as well. We're also working with Volvo Trucks, and we are showing just how an intersection could become more safer, being able to display extra information for the drivers crossing those intersections with the help of a digital twin. So do come and see us if you're in India. It will be super fun.
It might be crowded because Modi might be there as well.
I'm sure.
But I want to come actually with that to NIKLAS, because we've talked about now, of course, Volvo Trucks and Ericsson are working on the India Mobile Congress coming up this year. We have collaborations with the partners within the framework of SITIS as well as outside. But I'd like to talk about how we can use the bilateral conversation to reach the multilateral conversation, because you said something very important in the opening, which is that we have this climate conversation, we have this green transition conversation. The SDGs include road safety, they include decreasing global deaths, but we're not mainstreaming that conversation as perhaps as much as we could. How can the bilateral reach the multilateral and reach actually COP28?
Yeah, that's quite a big question, but let's try to do something with it. I think it's important to get pragmatic and do things where we can do things instead of just talking, right? And that's where I think the bilateral collaboration between India and Sweden is so essential, because it's a do mindset that we have, which is good, and we shouldn't take it as granted. I mean, look at the world today. It's getting worrisome here and there, right? It's not a stable world, and we see a lot of protectionism all around the world. And for a global company like Volvo in 190 different countries all over the world, it's worrying, and we need to work with the friends where it's established. And I'm dividing it a little bit in layers, and maybe this is because I think the private sectors, the big multinational companies can actually play an important role here. where we see politics change over the world, governments changing, and so on. But the global companies can actually secure that we build on something that is working globally based on bilateral collaboration, such as this one, as a good example, be it on traffic safety or be it on the green side, doesn't matter. But we need consistency, and we need to work over these changes of politics, over this, protectionism that we see in the world, and secure that things are happening, because we simply don't have time, right? And that is something that surprises me sometimes, that now it seems that everyone in society has actually understood that in the green transition we simply don't have time for too much of politics and, talk and talk and talk. We need to get moving, and that's good to see. In the traffic safety, I'm a little bit worried, honestly, because we stay on these 1.3 million traffic deaths every year. And we simply need to get going. And that's why I want to move into the multilateral discussions, because this is possibly something that we can bring from the cities collaboration between India and Sweden. How do we do things for real on a bilateral level? Why did Sweden and India work on traffic safety? And then grow that into multilateral, and not only on policy levels. Because multilateral often happens to be on policy level, right? So, but also for private sector, how do we bring it into the global context? What our learnings, both good and bad learnings. And
some of the easiest ways to do that might be through R&D, might be through pilot projects on the ground to start the conversation so everyone knows what's being discussed. I'm going to come to you, JOHN-FREDRIK, to give us potentially an example of how R&D can be this enabling factor, this glue that brings both sides together to allow to understand the potential to move from road safety to a larger conversation that mainstreams road safety within the green transition, within the SDGs, where they are already present.
Yeah. First, a comment to the 1.3 million that NIKLAS brought up. I think I also agree that we're quite stable, unfortunately, on 1.3. But one of the reason is that many of the new expanding economies are the ones where we have the most difficult fatality risks. And in the Western countries, we have learned how to handle it, and there we are decreasing somewhat. But emerging economies like India, for example, and also Africa, they're booming with the fatalities. But coming back to your question, Arati, I think by building such platforms, but also collecting data, but also sharing data among the researchers, among the industry, and among the governments, that is a way where we can contribute to the possibilities to change traffic behavior, to change traffic accident risks, etc. So in cities, for example, we have a possibility to gather a lot of data with the help of the industry, the Volvo buses, Volvo trucks, but also the data transfer possibility, the data collection via Ericsson with the 5G system, and then also implementing examples of platforms for traffic management systems, so that someone mentioned in the beginning, you don't know when the meeting starts. You know when the meeting starts, but you don't know when you will be there. So therefore, we are testing traffic management platforms by Saab, where we can see, at least to predict the travel time, etc. And that will also reduce the risk of standing and waiting for a coach along the roadside if you know that the bus is 2 hours late, etc. But so I think the cooperation, the collaboration within Triple-Helix is essential, and that we learn on a bilateral basis also to connect these possibilities. And then we will collect data that is also useful for a green transition, for example, travel distance, travel times, etc., and fuel economy. So there are a lot of possibilities.
This comes back to, of course, consistency and predictability being some of the key elements for security in all our different circumstances. I would like to end today's panel by asking Maria and then GAURAV to tell us from a government perspective in terms of Vision Zero, in terms of the SDGs we hope to achieve, what would you like to see happen in the next 10 years?
We have a lot of exchange about infrastructure and vehicles and so on and so forth, but I really would like that we had a better collaboration when it comes to implement road safety with other SDGs. And then I'm especially thinking about occupational health and safety, because it's probably the most dangerous place to be in the traffic, but still we're not treating it as a high risk as it is. And I think if we're looking into that on a Triple-Helix perspective, I really think we can move forward much faster.
That's great. GAURAV, I will ask you for the final words on today's panel.
Like Vision Zero has given the way to achieve the reduction in fatalities as well as injuries. Like we are very much committed in India to reduce the fatalities and injuries by 50% by 2030. And I'm sure that with the partnerships, collaborative efforts, with the help of various countries, academia, industry, as well as sharing our best practices, which has achieved the result of reduction or achieved the target of bringing the road fatalities and crashes to zero, those has to be shared. And definitely through these kind of partnership and collaborative efforts, we can definitely make significant strides towards a safer and more sustainable future. And target of Vision Zero will definitely be achieved.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, traffic safety is something that literally affects every one of us in this room. Together with the partners of SITIS here today, you'll find them probably at COP28, if not at COP28, Pragati Maidan, IMC, and Ericsson. Do stay informed about what SITIS is doing, and of course, the collaboration towards Vision Zero on the India-Sweden corridor. Please join me in giving our panelists a warm hand of applause.